Hey folks, Dustin Siggins with Proven Media Solutions. Welcome to another episode, hour with Cracking the Comms Code. And we have what seems to be a very popular topic of what the heck is going on in the communications job market. And so with me are recruiters Jessica and Brooke and economist Mike Feuz. Please put your questions in the comments. We have a sort of a light agenda, but we're definitely going to try to bring those questions into the conversation as early and as often as possible. Mike, Brooke, Jessica, if you can just briefly introduce yourselves and then also kind of lay out what you're seeing in 15 to 30 seconds in the overall job market, which kick off from there.
Okay, great. I can go first. I am Brooke Kruger and I run Casey Partners, and we focus exclusively on communication search. We place top candidates with corporations, VC firms, and pre and post IPO companies. I think the communications hiring market is very, very hot right now. People are adding positions to their team, growing their teams, but they're a very specific skill set.
Great. Hi, I'm Jessica Bayer. I lead the corporate affairs executive search function at DHR Global, a global retained executive search firm. I focus mostly on communications, marketing, and government affairs roles, and also oversee the DC office here. It's been a crazy first 5 months of 2026. I've recruited for roles that didn't exist 8 months ago, and I've recruited for companies that didn't exist 8 months ago. So it's been a wild, wild market, but super fun and lots of opportunities.
And I'm Michael Feuz. I'm an economist. I'm with ITR Economics, which is headquartered up in Manchester, New Hampshire, where Dustin originally hails from. But we're owned by, or our parent company is Crow, which is a global accounting firm, not quite Big Four, but right next tier down. So we're kind of the economic wing there. So I get insights into and work with companies across all different types of industries, helping them navigate the macro environment, plan their business for the coming years, understand what the environment's going to be that they're going to be in so that they can capacity plan, know when to hire, when to invest, budgeting, etc. So from a labor market view, kind of similar. It's a very still tight labor market, even despite the past year's, softer employment numbers. But we are kind of at this point where in the economy that with over 12,000 people turning 65 each day, and getting some net negative immigration the past year. It's almost just we're in this replacement phase in the economy for jobs. We almost don't have enough folks to replace those who are outgoing. So it's still a very tight labor market. We actually don't need labor or job growth actually to match the incoming because we actually have almost an even split of exiting and entry at this point, which is kind of a unique environment to be in, but it keeps the job market very tight. It also makes it a challenge for employers to find the right person. So it's that hunt for the right skilled person, which good news there keeps an upward pressure on wages for the workers out there.
So, Brooke and Jessica, back in January, last time we all spoke, something that Mike keyed in on just now is that things are going fine in the macro sense, but it doesn't necessarily feel that way because, as you both described, everyone's looking for the perfect employee. They're looking for the perfect comms person who's going to, as you said, I think it was Jessica, you said, you can kind of go outside of your industry, but it should be related, say heavily regulated industries, etc. So can you let everyone know what you've been seeing in the last almost 4 months since we spoke related to a tight labor market, but that overall seems positive because that doesn't match a lot of people's experiences.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of companies, the communications functions are shrinking. They're becoming smaller. The teams are becoming smaller because they're more efficient and using AI can be more efficient. So that means every human being on your team has to be excellent. It keeps Brooke and I employed. So every one of our clients, and I'm sure Brooke's saying the exact same thing, is able to create a laundry list of what they're looking for in a communications leader, both from a functional standpoint and from a culture, personality, fit standpoint, and then expect to find that exact person. So that's what we spend a lot of time doing, trying to really thread that needle to give our clients the perfect person because they want to make sure that every person on their smaller team is high functioning, meeting and exceeding expectations because there's no time for complacency and there's no budget for it. And it's just not something that most companies can afford to have anymore.
Yeah, and I would add on that, agree with everything Jessica says, but there's nowhere to hide. So
Mhm.
the days of these big, large teams where people had very siloed functions, like that doesn't work anymore. Everybody needs to, if you're a leader, you also have to be an individual contributor. If you're an individual contributor, you have to be able to do it all. And so the hiring managers are being very specific for what they want in their roles, but they also are, their expectations are higher than ever.
So let's talk about expectations being higher than ever. We have a lot of people from across the country. And one of the things that I've been hearing, and I'm not in the recruiting space, I run an agency, but I communicate with a lot of people through LinkedIn and other places. And one thing they're talking about is it feels like the market moves really slow in a way that's unfair. People get ghosted. People go through these long interview process, 3, 4, 5 interviews, and then they get told no. But
Plus
they're
an
also,
assignment, right? They go through the process 3 or 4 or 5 interviews, plus a lengthy assignment that they have to
oh
do.
yes, true, and an unpaid assignment. My wife's a nurse, and I was outraged when she told me that they wanted her to shadow for 2 hours and not pay her. I thought that was the most insulting thing. Um, how do people keep optimistic? How do you expect people to keep grinding? Or, as we talked about in January, should they grind less and be more strategic in looking for those jobs? And people, please ask questions because again, we're going to kind of bop around a little bit, but I want to make sure we answer your very specific questions and concerns that you're seeing for yourselves.
I think in a tough job market or a challenging job market, while I love pivots and I love people exploring, outside the box, it's harder to get hired for a job when you're trying to go across industries or trying to switch. Say you love internal comms and you're good at that, but you want to switch over to executive comms. Well, there's parallel, um, skill set, but most likely in a market like we're in, they're going to hire based on experience and previous companies and pedigree and skill set. So it's harder to make a jump. So good advice is to kind of focus on your area, but I never want to shut down someone's dreams because I do love a pivot. I mean, I pivoted from comms into comms recruiting and
Right. I,
so
Yeah, I had a call with someone actually this morning on this exact topic, and she is a big producer at a major news outlet, and she wants to go to a corporation. And she's like, I applied for this job, I don't know, Netflix for leading internal comms, and I can't believe nobody called me. And I was like, hold up. Like, no, nobody's going to call you. You don't have internal comms experience. Can you get internal comms experience where you are right now? And she was like, well, we don't have an internal comms function. I was like, can you fight for an internal comms function where you are right now and go and get 6 months of experience that is now at the top of your resume, and then you can go somewhere else and get an internal comms role. But it's going to be really hard for someone else to take a chance on you. Your current company, where you've been for 10 years, they're more likely to take that chance on you, and that'll set you up for future opportunities.
And just to back up both of those two stories, from what we're seeing economically, is the businesses in 2026 are feeling more and more margin pressures, excuse me, on their profitability. The number one driver to that is wage costs to their employees. And we're forecasting about a 5% wage increase year over year over year. So, for a company to add that next employee, that labor growth to their team, they have this incentive to be extra sure that you're going to deliver that ROI that they expect. So, it makes, to both of your points, making that switch, you better be able to signal to the employer very clearly that you're going to be able to deliver that ROI they're expecting because they're feeling wage pressures and other cost pressures across the board mounting on their business. Like it is hard to grow profitability right now, and that's going to impact how we approach the job market or how employers approach the job market.
if good, I'm sorry,
I
Jessica.
just love that perspective, Mike. It's so like important to put dollars to everything that we talk about, and I just love that perspective. So
Yeah, I mean,
glad.
I see it in real time and that's our advice to every one of the clients I consult with is like you need to protect the team you have. Like the human minds in your team is your most valuable resource. but you also need, I'm telling them, like, you need to think about what tools am I adding to increase my productivity so you can delay adding that next person because of how costly it is. So, I mean, from a consultant standpoint, trying to help businesses stay profitable and deliver a good service or product to their customers, I'm telling them, like, what are you doing so the next person you have to add is farther down the road? And sometimes, depending on the industry, it
You're
changes.
preventing hiring. I get
Yes, yes. I'm working with the
So,
employers trying to, yeah.
it. Great.
But if I'm advising someone, like, here's what employers are feeling. So how do you make yourself invaluable? Like, I'll pay top dollar for this person. Like, you have to signal it very clearly.
I'll
so
pay top
along the,
dollar and hire an executive recruiter to do it.
well, and so that leads to my question here, right? Because a lot your opening statement, Mike, said that wage pressure is going up. That means people should make more money. But you're also saying that profitability is being challenged, and companies should use more tools where they hire that next person. There seems to be a conflict there that you're going to make more money, but good luck finding the job. But you also said the economy is strong. Help us square that circle for us
Yeah.
dummies over here in the PR
I mean,
space.
the biggest gap so businesses' top lines are growing fantastically. The problem is underneath the top line, the profitability is compressing. So if I'm a business leader and I'm trying to capture market share and grow, I'm looking at my top line like we're doing pretty good. And then when I pull back, I'm like, whoa, our profitability though is down 7-8% from last year. What am I doing to solve that problem? It's got to be a productivity gains. And one chart I like to show business leaders is that demand is up. When we look at like personal consumption in the US, deflated. So I'm trying to get a better view of like volume, not just everyone's paying more for the same stuff. That's outpaced labor productivity by, I'm trying to remember, I think it's about 18% since the early 2000s. So that means we are underperforming product. We need to be able to deliver for every person added. We need that person to be able to increase about 18% on productivity to match demand, which is why businesses are just hoping AI delivers. For every widget, the cost of adding an ex-employer, we're short almost 20%, I guess, of the output that we need from that person. So this is,
That's a lot of math there, Mike.
I know, I'm sorry. I sit there and look at charts and construct. It basically essentially means is like businesses need to make investments in the tools that make their employees more productive. And when those tools come on board and they have it, it actually will lower the cost of hiring the next person. But we're in a different world right now. The wage, because of the tight labor market, the cost of adding that next person is a big pressure on businesses, which if you're searching for the job, the point that kind of reiterating the previous point is you really got to justify your value more than ever.
Mhm.
The demand's there, but the employer is picky. They need that person, but they're like, it's got to be the right person, which again, executive recruiter is how you solve that knowledge problem, right? How do I identify that right person? Jessica or Brooke?
I mean, 100%, but I love your theories on backing up why companies are so picky right now.
Yeah.
So
It's not that they don't need labor, but it has to be the right labor,
it
the
has to be.
right worker, the right
Well, it's
employee.
also, I mean, nobody wants to make the wrong hire, and
So costly.
it's so costly, and it's just an unfortunate situation.
Yeah.
No one wants to put someone in that position.
Yeah.
So let's try to give some good news here. Let's see if there's anywhere to
Good
do
news
good
is wages are up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
5%
Yeah.
increase over a 4% increase
Yeah.
previously.
Yeah.
Love it.
And I've seen salary bands starting to go up a little bit, and if they're not, I'm advising our clients, look, you're now below market, and that's not appealing to candidates either.
No. If you want the right person too, you got to pay them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So David asks, given the tricky number of full-time in-house roles, especially at the senior level, how do you see the outlook for independent comms consultants and fractional execs? This whole world, as most people know, I was new to the LinkedIn comms world 2 years ago. And one thing that has been fascinating for me to learn in sort of a retrospective is how many people have gone from being in-house to consultants in the last 4 years. I think Jessica and Brooke, you've described it as an overhiring that happened in 2020 to 2022, though that drastic slowdown 23 and 24. How are you seeing in-house roles compared to those two very tough, more tough years? One and two, to those people who are currently consulting, maybe especially as a gap fill. Do you see that continuing likely to be their future, or are you seeing more of those in-house roles, especially at the senior level, those opportunities arising again?
Well, I think some people are going to start consulting and find they love it and they can, set their own hours, they can make a lot of money and they may not want to go back in-house. Yes, they'll lose out on benefits and equity and things like that, but when if there's not a position for them to go to, consultants remains the path to go. So I think many will keep consulting and then some people may consult and they're ready to go back in house and there will be a place for them. But as the market increases, there could be room for both.
Yeah, and a lot of my corporate clients are, kind of moving away from having a big agency as their agency of record and instead are hiring boutique or niche agencies or people who have a specific skill set. So I definitely think it's valuable. The challenge I can see, and Brooke and I are both part of Mixing Board. I mean, there's maybe 200 consultants that are part of Mixing Board and it grows day by day. It's going to get more competitive for the independent consultants, and that's going to be tough. And so, as an independent consultant, as Dustin knows, you're doing business development, you're doing operations, you're doing all the work, you're doing a lot of things, and that's going to be attractive to some people and not to others. And so, always keeping the door open for in-house, I think, is smart. Or going to a mid-sized agency or consult in the meantime.
If I could pose a question, I'm just curious from an economic perspective, Brooke and Jessica, or at least I would analyze it. Have you seen over time, at your time in the industry as an executive recruiter, the demand from clients for how much they would demand in-house versus, oh, now we're in a consultant, we want a out-of-house appetite? Do you see those appetites for how they pivot over time? And has there ever been a theory on what drives the shift of like, we want to build the in-house team. Actually, let's go the other direction now. What drives the mood swings, I guess?
I think the economy, I think cost, I think a lot of times headcount goes on hold. We have someone we placed in a role and they were supposed to be a full-time role, but the headcount got cut and they have been consulting since basically September because the company is able to allow a consultant versus a full-time hire. So sometimes that is driving it. But in a down market, you see more consultants versus full-time hires.
And then there's that fear too, like from the overhiring piece. Like I can't do
Yeah.
that again. I can't go through that again. I can't lay off all these great people again. Like there's fear. Like, do I actually have enough, or is our business going to grow enough for me to create this hire consistently in the future for the next few years? Like, and I think fear sometimes holds people back from investing in a full-time hire.
One of the
Curious.
things that, go
Oh,
ahead,
no,
Michael.
go ahead, Dustin. No, no, you go ahead.
So one of the few different people are bringing up different topics, and they kind of all relate. Lindy and Brooke, different Brooke, and Steve have all brought different questions that relate to how much do you need to be broad, state yourself to be more broad. Like I have, my background's internal comms, but I have that broader comms experience versus Steve says, I've been in financial services for 9 years. I spent 10 years in the med device industry prior to that. Is that still relevant? And so I've met a lot of consultants in the last 2 years. And one of the things I always tell them is be an inch wide and a mile deep. Better to own what you're phenomenal at, especially in a tight labor market, than try to say I'm generic comms and can do everything. And I want to make sure that as we're talking, the four of us, I want like the three of you to clarify when you say that you have to be able to lead, go on the ground and do things. I think it was Jessica, you were saying you have to be able to lead up here, but also be someone who can go to the ground and work. I think that can be seen as being an inch deep and a mile wide. Can you clarify that a little bit?
I mean, the thing is, times have changed, and everyone is expected to be strategic, but also be a doer. And so,
Right.
I think in this new world, it's really what problem are you trying to solve, and how can you help an organization do that? And so, I do
Mhm.
think you need to be. I don't want to say all things to all people, but you need to be highly skilled in what you can do and figure out a way to excel in the things you maybe weren't as comfortable with.
Yeah, and I think being evolving expert is super important. So let's take like executive communications, for example. I actually just kicked off an exec comm search today. And I no longer need someone who only knows how to do executive communications from a media relations standpoint, pitching and prepping an executive for a meeting. This person also needs to understand how to navigate a digital reputation and an online reputation and navigate that in the world of AI. So like gone or not gone, but SEO and SEM's less. Now we're talking about GEO and AEO and all those things. I need that expert, if you're going to be an executive comms expert, to be an expert in all areas of exec comms and go deep on digital and understand all of those pieces. That's how you're going to stand out. You can't just be a top level executive in what, or a top level expert in what was considered an expert 2 years ago. What's considered an expert today is a lot different.
Yep. Agreed.
And so being able to have those skills, we're a PR firm, right? We do earned media, but we know how to work with the marketing team. We know how to uncover the story like a journalist would. That's all falls for us under that same, inch wide, mile deep skill set of PR. So you're saying the executive communications expert, it's not the matter of trying to do everything. It's a matter of understanding exactly what's needed right now in that specific scope. Internal comms, I assume likewise, where you are an expert at many things, but they're all under that single umbrella or that single lane, if you will.
Yeah, but like even in internal comms, the internal comms role I kicked off today, it is internal comms, but they also want awards for best places to work. And they also want to take their HR folks and get them externally speaking. So now the internal comms person has to also do external comms, but from an HR standpoint. So you're expanding, but you're still staying within your lane. But even you, Dustin, like with media relations, I mean, I'm sure you think about now how your clients are going to show up in LLMs based on the media placements that they're getting now that they're
Yes,
pulling from different
correct.
media outlets. So it's
Yeah.
not, it's evolving.
No, that's a good point. So there's someone asked a question here, Chris Palermo. I'm finding it frustrating and a little misguided that it's not about can you do the job. It's more like what kind of brand have you built for yourself on LinkedIn? Companies want to hire a celebrity. This actually ties back to something we talked at length about in January, a little bit in September, but I think really more in January. Probably spent 15 or 20 minutes talking about how to build your brand. And so in a couple of weeks, they're actually able to doing a separate show on how PR people, but also the wider comms world need to come out of the shadows. No longer can you just be that person sending in a resume with a great background because you're going to get buried under 1,000 others. And people expect you to show what I call the pathway. Can they see themselves in the stories you're sharing on LinkedIn because there's such a competitive market? So, Brooke, Jessica, can you dial into it's not about so much being a celebrity, but it's about showing that pathway, showing how people can understand your brain and what that background means for their specific communications needs.
Yeah, I mean, I think when you share a resume, the hiring manager and the company are going to go to your LinkedIn profile and they're going to want to know that you're active and you're engaged with things. I don't think they're going to, I mean, I haven't seen people say, oh, I'm going to hire this person because they're a LinkedIn celebrity or their profile is more or than the other person, but it's important that that you are representing yourself in the best way. I mean, in the olden days when I started recruiting, we would be like, okay, is your Facebook profile, do you have a beer in your hand? Are you on spring break? Like that, we've come very far from those days, but people now go, use LinkedIn as a source where, you elevate, the companies you work for. And so you want to be as active as you're comfortable with on LinkedIn. But I don't think you need to be a LinkedIn celebrity to get a job. And I haven't seen that, but
I agree,
that's
Brooke.
good.
Yeah, I completely agree. I don't think you have to be a celebrity, but we talked a little bit about visibility and being visible and top of mind for a recruiter when they see you or they see you write something in the space of that they're actively searching for someone, then you may be top of mind and you may get a call or you may get outreach. Because what's happening with all, and we talked about this last week or last January, when a job's posted and 1,000 people apply and the recruiter starts going through resumes and hits 100 resumes on hour 3 and none of them are right, they're going to go to LinkedIn and search for the right person. So you want to make sure you're searchable. You don't have to be a celebrity, but you need to have the keywords of what you want to do in your profile so you come up. And I think the more thought leadership you do, maybe the higher you'll show up in that search.
I think, at least from my perspective too, what you're talking about is, and based on that question, Dustin, is in the comms industry, that celebrity status, which I think we've maybe downplayed, not downplayed, but said it's not so much the celebrity status, it's how engaged are you, how top of mind can you keep. That's like representing some form of a Rolodex that maybe if I was hiring a cybersecurity rep around DC, like, do you know all the key players? To be in the comms industry and to be active and know how to keep yourself top of mind. And that's a further demonstration of in a way that maybe a top sales rep demonstrates their Rolodex. Like I know how to get around my industry, I know the players, or I know how to stay top of mind in the conversation.
I mean, another thing with LinkedIn, like it or not, when you're at the end of a job process, hiring manager and the company are likely to go through your LinkedIn contacts, see who you have in common. They may do back channel references, and people are enthralled and enamored. Oh my gosh, we have 57 connections. Like that seems to be in common. Like that's something that people like, but that's not necessarily making you a LinkedIn celebrity. It's just showing you're a well-connected person in your space.
Actually, I want to dial into what you just said because Jeremy Tunis just responded to Chris, who's very concerned about the celebrity status issue. And he said, I think they often want to see whether the comms exec walks the walk publicly. They do for themselves what they're portraying to do for others. And I am actually going to share my screen as I did last time because I think this will dial into what Chris is talking about is I have a post that I did last week. I hope it'll show up. And you got okay engagement. I know 1,500 impressions is nothing special compared to the celebrities. It got, 40 engagements. Probably this is me reposting it. Yep, that's our company reposting it. Like, half the comments are me replying to people. This is not a viral post. But what this did was kind of come with something counter narrative. Because again, PR. Everyone's emailing or using Signal or using X or oh, sorry, Brooke. And so what I did was say, well, let's pick up the phone. I explained the issue, explained the challenge, and I explained why the strategic approach was using the phone. And then I explained the outcome and the what PR is really about. I think it was a little
I mean, I
entertaining.
love a post like this. It does not seem AI written. You show a problem and how you solved it.
Correct.
I like this. I'm surprised you didn't get more engagement, but something's tricky right now with the LinkedIn algorithm.
Oh, trust me. Look, I mean, this one got 500 impressions. This one was a Saturday post.
Oh my God, I loved this
Oh,
one.
I
that's
have done.
cute.
I
Yeah,
love
but
that one.
you comment. You're very kind to comment on this one.
I loved it. I
But
love that
like,
one.
and the reason I bring that up is you don't have to be a celebrity. I'm not a celebrity in the
Yes,
PR
you
world.
are. Don't
No,
sell
no,
yourself
but
short.
really not. What I mean is some people get huge engagement and that makes them a celebrity. But I have the content that attracts my target audience, which
Yeah.
is communications executives, in-house comms leaders, and other larger agency executives who see us as their earned media partner. And I think what's really missing a lot of times with comms folks, and what I've learned in the last 15 months, is people who've worked at agencies have a large network that they've regularly engaged with. In-house people, what I ask in-house people, they're asking me about job searching is, I say, do you have 10 people that you call today? And this is, who you could reach out to and say, my skills, that I can solve your problem, and I know you have budget to hire me as a consultant or in-house. And then you have 30 people who do that in the next 6 months if you reached out to them. And my sample size is not huge, it's about 10 people, but the agency and consultant people all say yes. The in-house people all say no. And so I think what happens a lot of times, in-house people are so focused on serving the organization that they let their network sort of not apathize. What's the word? Shrink.
I know they just kind of this
Yeah.
static. They keep it static.
Static.
They
It
don't
goes
grow.
static and people forget that you're there. So I think that having this kind of content, it doesn't go viral. But what it does do is remind everybody of the pathway of my mind. And if that attracts them, then they're going to contact me when there's a need. And I think you have to treat yourself as a client when you're looking for a job. Sorry, that was a lot of talking. I didn't mean to take away
No,
from
I
the
like what you
experts.
said, and I think your first point. I'm not going to say it as well as you did, but like you have the content that a specific audience wants right now, and that's what you're sharing. You're not
Sure.
trying to be all things to all people. You're sharing relevant content for a specific group, which I like.
Sure. That makes sense. Mike, do employers care from your perspective when you're talking to the exec team? Brooke and Jessica have the perspective of a recruiter. We're going to look for your content.
Hmm.
That's going to help us look. But when you're talking to executives, what is the thing they want to see in the interview process? What kind of story do they want to hear? Because again, we talked about it on LinkedIn from the recruiter perspective. What are executives looking to hear on a story?
I mean, yeah, the excellent question. So we've definitely, a lot of the clients that I get to work with closely, they dealt with exactly what I think Jessica was you describing, like that over hiring coming out of COVID, this unfortunate kind of correction that had to occur. Kind of the fool, I call it, fool me once, shame on you. And now we're kind of in this phase like, I'm not going to have that happen again. That was painful for a variety of reasons. Uh, and the employers, whether regardless of what team that they're hiring onto, it kind of circles back. They really want to be confident they're bringing in an expert from a variety of different ways, whether that's onto the marketing team, the comms team, into the sales teams, because it's a business leader that's trying to grow his business right now is starting to realize we had this post-COVID sugar rush where business was good, didn't matter. It was just money seemed to be flowing in. I could price it any which way, and people bought it. And this time we're in this growth phase, but it's more and more the executives are like, I have to rely on market share capture to grow my business, not just being gifted more business. So who do I add to my team? They're like, prove to me you're an expert. Prove to me that you're engaged in the space. Prove to me you understand what I'm doing already. And show me what I don't understand. Show me what you're bringing in addition. Um, I've seen so many teams revamped in the past 18 months because of lessons learned post COVID sugar rush. And it's almost a new mentality has emerged with the C-suite executives who are like, all right, where do we go from here? It's a new world we're in.
Speaking of New World, Natalia said, as tech evolves and communications with it, things are moving so fast. What is the expectation for companies, the people they want everyone to be an expert in areas that are so new? And I think what Jessica and Brooke, what you said in January was you don't necessarily have to be a full expert in AI because nobody is, but you do have to know enough about it to be able to say, this is how we're implemented as a strategic tool. Is that a fair assessment since AI is always, of course, the elephant in the room?
Absolutely. I mean, it's even more so since we've talked, but
Yeah.
people are using AI, um, daily, hourly, every minute, and they're using it to improve processes and efficiencies. And I think you need real world examples of how you've used AI creativity, creatively to improve something. And you should expect to be asked that in an interview process. And you should
Yeah.
expect to go deeper than what we told you in January.
Yes, for sure. I mean, online reputation management has changed completely. And so people need to evolve and learn what that looks like now. Also, AI companies are popping up left and right. If you want a comms job at a new AI company, they're out there, but you have to obviously understand AI and understand the platform and understand how to use it. So, more so than January, it's even more true right now. And it's like it can be exciting.
It can be exciting. And I think in general, people, when you're interviewing, companies want people who are curious. A good question right now would be how are your teams using AI to improve the communications function? What creative things are you doing? And so trying to get an idea how they're already using AI. And then maybe your mind will be like, oh my gosh, but we did that, but we also did this, this, and this.
Hmm. And even with like internal comms, people are looking for folks who have taken employees on a tech journey because every company is going through tech changes. And so, how do you get your employee population excited about all of the tech changes? And that's a huge part of an internal comms role now that didn't exist or wasn't a huge part of a job, a couple years ago.
So a couple of things. One, let's try to go get back to some good news here. Because again, we've talked a lot about
Lots of
challenges
good
here.
news.
This
Yeah.
is good news.
It's all
Learn and
good news.
grow.
The good news is comms people don't know how to present ourselves and to communicate our value. Fantastic. What have you seen, Brooke and Jessica, in the last 4 months where the people you're referring to your clients or you're recommending to your clients, what are they doing better that is allowing them to stand out more? We've talked about LinkedIn, we've talked about making your profile look better, but what are sort of the one or two things that have really accelerated in the last few months.
Well, I think in an interview process, if you can stand out as curious and knowledgeable, and you should expect to be asked questions about what's going on in the news cycle. We have to remember the news cycle is so crazy right now. 2 days ago, things that were in the news, no one's even talking about them,
Yes.
even if they were extremely crazy. And so you have to show that you can go the next level, and what stands out and what people are doing well are able to quickly digest the company, their interviews news cycle, and make comments about what they did well, and then comments about what they could have done, and then understanding what companies are doing things right now.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. It's the biggest frustration I think my clients have when they interview someone is not getting specifics and not being able to envision them in the role because they ask a bunch of questions and get a bunch of high level responses. You really have to think about specific examples of what you've done because, as everyone alluded to and what we talked about last time, everyone's looking for someone who can be credible with the CEO, but also roll up their sleeves and do the work. So the hiring manager needs to hear examples of you doing the work and what your role was and what was different because you were in seat versus anyone else in seat and how you handled it, and really dig into those specific examples because I think authenticity has become more important than before. 20 years ago it was like who can show up the most professional to an interview. Now it's like walking away from an interview, who do I feel like I can work with and learn from and be in the trenches with, and everything's going to be okay. And so those examples and that authenticity and building that relationship and rapport with the folks that you are interviewing with is super important. And
I
those
also,
folks are standing out.
I also want to dial on what you said, if one of you said a few minutes ago about asking questions. We were in a conversation recently with a prospect. They're an old client. Things didn't work out so well, mostly because I was inexperienced as a leader. But kept a good relationship. And when they needed PR help again, they came back to us. And in the prospect meeting, they've now become a client. Suddenly, we were told the target audience wasn't this; it was this. And live, we had to spin on everything, not spin in the bad way, but like spin ourselves, pivot, if you will. And
But to
one of the
think
things
on your
that
feet. They were
yeah,
trying to
think on
figure
your
out if you
feet.
could think on
Again,
your
I
feet.
promise I know words. Someone else pointed out that I meant actually figure words. I promise I know words. And so I remember looking at the director of sales, who was not part of the executive leadership team that we were going to be representing, but she was in the meeting. I looked at her and I said, how has this challenge, and this challenge impacted the number of customers coming in the door compared to a year ago when this challenge first started presenting itself? And I thought that was just a fairly logical question given A, B, C information that had been provided. And the CEO looked at me and said, that's a really good question. And, and I don't know if that question made the difference, but it showed that we were paying attention, and it showed that we understood where their pain was. And it showed that we were thinking beyond the scope of writing
Mhm.
press releases or securing earned media. What I've learned, and it was a hard lesson. Mike met me before I knew how to ask questions. I knew how to give a lot of answers. And I was trained by a former sales mentor on how to ask questions. And what I've learned is that by just asking questions that are logical, forward looking, and seem smart, you look smart. You can actually probably do really well in an interview by answering very little, but just by repackaging what you've been asked and what you've been told and just giving concrete examples along the way. So I want to encourage everybody to, I think it was Jessica said, ask lots of questions. Make sure they're very specific ahead of time. Like you research ahead of time. So when you go in to ask that question, it's not, well, what was your revenue last year? But rather, how did communications play a role in getting revenue last year? And how do you anticipate that for the next 3 years for this kind of senior role? Those kinds of things will really help you stand out because most communicators aren't treating themselves like a client, they're treating it like a job.
100, very well said.
Your words came back.
They
They
did.
did, they did. As long as I don't think too much, they come back. It's great. Um, so, Mike, you haven't talked in a few minutes. What haven't we addressed? We have about 12
Well,
minutes
yeah,
left.
I appreciate what you just said, Dustin, because I think it's important in the interview that shifts the whoever, you're looking for that job and that hire, and it shifts you from just being the next employee to almost we're bringing in the next trusted advisor to our team. If you start
Ooh, yes.
asking me and them those consulting questions and make them think and answer back to you, it's like, wow, his mindset's already in a place and maybe I'm not even thinking about these questions or no one's even bothered to ask me and my internal leadership. And suddenly they're like, I'm not talking to, the next employee. This is a trusted advisor that I now need on my team.
Mhm.
And we're already talking about, well, we've already talked like how are you positioning yourself for that higher wage? They're going to be paying that premium because they have to and they see that value there. Great way to get ahead of it. And in a stack, maybe 20 interviews they're doing, suddenly, you've changed, you're at the top. So I thought that it was well stated there. And I think from all the conversations I have with employers and what they're looking for, that's more and more they need a trusted advisor on their team than just someone to do the work.
Yeah. When I ask a client, like this person starts in 6 months, what has made them wildly successful? 9 times out of 10, it's they are a trusted advisor to the leadership team. That is what's
Yeah.
made someone successful. It's not accomplishing anything specific. It's just being that trusted advisor. And then the accomplishments come after that.
Yeah.
So,
Sometimes a C-suite therapist, I guess you could call it, right?
so a couple years back, there was a report, a survey that came out showing that the CCO position was getting more respect. This was summer of 24. And Eleanor at Axios kind of made it famous. And someone commented, I wrote a piece and interview, and someone, I think it was Becca Chambers, said, yeah, we're at the little kids table, not the big table. And that does seem to be a common complaint in the communications world, at least on LinkedIn, which is my limited sort of observation window, is there's a lot of people think that we have to force our way. Jennifer George at the Aspen Group said, shove your way into that leadership conversation. Jessica and Brooke, from your perspective, and even Mike, are you seeing that the executive leadership team sees communications as a core part of their strategic thinking? Is that been improving, or does communication still need to show its value as more than a nice to have, but as a must have?
I mean, I think communications absolutely has a seat at the table. And if your company does not see that, you are in trouble.
Um, uh, yes, yes. I mean, and Brooke and I may have a skewed perspective because if a company's hiring us to fill a role, they typically
True.
believe in the function
Yeah,
and know the value of the function,
that's fair.
which is nice. But I talk to a lot of candidates, and what are you looking for in a job in an informational conversation, and it's a seat at the table, and that's nice. But like you have to, I don't think you need to force your way into a seat at the table. You just need to show impact, show results, get quick wins, and you'll be invited to the table. So even if the last CCO had a seat at the table, it doesn't mean you're going to have one. You really have to build, again, back to the trusted advisor piece, you have to build that respect and rapport. And I think it's hard for a lot of type A, really high performing comms leaders when they go to their next job, they assume they're going to be as credible and trusted as they were in their last job. And no matter who you are, you have to start over and you have to build those relationships and take people on that journey. And then you'll get the seat at the table.
Executives 100% are, I think in just this day and age, are hyper cognizant of the importance of communications, the need to communicate correctly, and the cost if they don't. But to your point, you got to earn that trust too. Like they know it's important, but it's so important. I'm not going to let anyone sit at the table.
Mhm.
It goes back to the trusted advisor thing on an emotional level as well as a logical level.
Yeah.
So I kept trying to get us to focus more positive, but we're going to close with Brian's question here. For Brooke or Jessica, we know there are good search clients, some that aren't so good. What are the red flags you're seeing from the not so good clients right now who we should be mindful of and ask about in interviews? And I think so. Let's focus on like what's a red flag that you're seeing on your client side, the employer side, but also what's a red flag you're seeing on the people you're referring that either you're seeing it in general, like on their LinkedIn page or something like that, or it's going to the interview and the red flag comes up in that process. What are the biggest red flags you're seeing on both sides of the interview table?
I mean, on the candidate side, I always say this, but people being unprepared, people think they're prepared for an interview, but they really may not be. I do a lot of thought leadership on LinkedIn about just specifics, diving in and how to be prepared for an interview. And so that's a big red flag. On the client side, I think a a messy and scattered process that's not transparent is one of my biggest pet peeves. When you are in the before we begin an interview process, what are we trying to achieve? Who needs to meet? And we try to stick with that. There obviously can be changes and things can happen, but I don't like when things just get real scattered, and it's just a bad look. We want every candidate to have a wonderful interview experience, whether they are hired or not, because especially in communications, people talk, and everybody needs to leave a company having interviewed there feeling good about the company, whether they're hired or not.
Yeah, when we kick off a search, the goal is to bring everybody from the interview process together to agree on what this role is, what it looks like, the impact, all of that. Where it goes awry is when the interviewers all think about the role differently, value it differently, expect something different. Everyone really has to be aligned and on the same page. And that's telling. That's telling that not necessarily, I mean, red flag, it's a caution. You're going to have to do a lot of education when you come into this company on what your role is and know that not everybody's aligned. So, that's one thing. Also, the interview process, if it's too long, 17 interviews is the max that I've taken a candidate through. That's telling that's hard to make a decision, or it's too collective to make a decision, or you'll never make a decision. Like it's just too much. So you can learn a lot in the interview process. I also learn a lot in the contract negotiation process. Like if it takes forever, that's probably how it's going to be to get a job description and get an offer letter and all of those things. If it's easy and clear and there's a sense of urgency and there's a decision maker, that at the company there's a decision maker and it's easy and clear and you can get things done. So there's a lot of things that like are uncovered in the interview process on both sides. From the candidate side, yes, not being prepared, not being engaged, not doing your research, not knowing who you're talking to, all of those things. You could be capable, but if you don't show up on the day of the interview in the right way, you're not going to get the job.
Yeah, and everyone has bad days, but you it's so competitive. You have to put your best foot forward. I mean, I can talk all day about mistakes people make, but we want to be positive. I think this is so simple, but you have to be responsive. If you are in an interview process and people ask for your availability, respond quickly. You can say, "Look, I'm going to get back to you later today with my availability," if you don't know it. I mean, that's just a simple thing. I think we need to go back to like the basics, like be polite, be prepared, be on time, be and one thing that's coming up now is a lot of interviews are now in person. If you're interviewing for a job and you're working with a recruiter, ask the recruiter, what's the attire? What's the style? And ask a specific example. If I was a gentleman, I would say, okay, do I need to wear a suit and tie? Do I need to wear a sport coat? Do I need to, jeans, business casual? Be very specific so you show up looking your best and feeling your best and not feeling uncomfortable.
So we're about to wrap up, but I want to dial into something Mark just put in really, really quickly, quick round robin on it.
Okay.
Because, so two things. One, Mark said that a lot of the things we're talking about haven't been over the last quarter. This has been over a year of longer hiring cycles, fewer openings, intense competition, stalled decision making. I just want to be clear for anyone who hasn't watched the prior two episodes back in January and September. These have been conversations we've been having for a long time. We're not just saying this is new in the last quarter. We are simply examining what has changed in the last quarter because there's a lot of people who have watched us have this conversation twice now, September and January. So everyone who's new, we're not trying to pretend like these challenges are new to the industry. But I also found it interesting, Jessica, I think 17 interviews. How much work do you all do? If like we have mostly people who are looking for work watching right now. How much work do you put in to protect the candidate from bad client? I mean, 17 interviews is horrendous. How do you make your client, your candidates aware of things like this? Hey, these are the red flags we're seeing. If you're okay with those red flags, go ahead. I mean, explain some of that process if you don't mind.
Yeah, I mean, I live in a world of complete transparency and honesty. And when you're going to walk into a role, you're going to walk in eyes wide open. But what's changed in the, I guess, executive search world is my job used to be get a job description, fill role, done. Now I spend a lot of time with the client ahead of time, creating the role, creating the job description, making sure the org structure is right, this role makes sense, then writing the job description, recruiting the person, and then placing the person, and then spending time with the person for the next year, ensuring they're set up for success, and with the client, and making sure both the client and the candidate are thriving and that they can come to me if they're having issues and I can help them navigate, kind of the company and the role. So this isn't more like now a place, a one and done. It's definitely relationships and helping the company create a role that's going to set someone up for success and then help a candidate be successful once they're placed on the other side.
Brooke?
Yeah, I mean, I think and to answer your question, like what are we doing? I mean, to protect the candidates, we transparency is everything. And if I'm never want to force someone to a job. If it doesn't feel right, I am there for them and we're going to try to figure this out versus having someone start a job and it's not right. So when red flags, yellow flags come up, we can digest them together and kind of figure out what the motivations are behind that. I should count how many interviews someone had. I don't know if we've had 17, but like the sad thing is when Jessica said that, like it didn't surprise me. Like there are companies out there that are just putting people through the ringer because they can't make a decision. And I think going back to what Jessica said, those should be kind of yellow flags. Like, is it hard to build consensus? Is it, do people listen? Yeah, people listen, but do they actually take advice? So I think, we represent our candidates and our clients. It's a double relationship, but we do want to set everyone up for success.
And Mike, let's have you end on the positive note. Careful, people. Lots of math coming. What are you seeing for the rest of the year in terms of the overall economy and especially in the communications function?
Well, Dustin, the economics is called the dismal science, so I don't know how I feel like you're setting me up for some lofty expectations. I mean, broadly, the good news is that the job market, it's tight out there. We have more people, or at least it's close to a 1-to-1 ratio of folks exiting to the need for job creation, meaning we don't have to rely so much on jobs being added for there to be those openings. So, again, good for folks looking for the job. And businesses are starting to look ahead now. They're seeing that, yeah, we're probably in a growth environment. They're seeing the demand, but they're also realizing it's a different world than what we came out of the past 5 to 6 years. So I think the opportunity is there. It's how to take it. The opportunity is absolutely there in the job market for comms folks. It's are you taking advantage of it the right way? So it's not relying. There going to be less gimmies this time around, but if you're prepared to take advantage of it, it's going to be there's opportunity out there for you.
And make sure you follow Brooke and Jessica, connect with them on LinkedIn, folks. Make sure you connect with them on a personal level. And then also, again, what we talked about earlier, go back about 25 minutes. We talked a lot about LinkedIn, and it's not about becoming a celebrity, it's about showing the pathway. Much like an interview, you want them to be able to see you want your employer to see you in the shoes of the role. And LinkedIn can help you do that both when they check you out, but also when the recruiter is looking to see if you're the right fit. So, folks, thanks very much. We'll do this again in a few months. Really appreciate it. If you're not sure how to show up on LinkedIn, on May 27th, we will have the guru who helped me show up on LinkedIn, as well as a couple of other folks. And we'll be talking about coming out of the shadows, how in 2026 you cannot be behind the scenes. You have to build your own brand. So that's May 27th at 1 p.m. Eastern. The link will be, the event will be online the prior day. But come back to this page on that day and you can watch us talk about that and ask the same kind of question you've been discussing today. Jessica, Brooke, Mike, thanks so much again.
Yeah.
See y'all in a couple of months.
So
Bye.
fun.
Great being here. Talk to you guys
Thanks.
soon.